Born with spina bifida, John Volk, who's also an amputee, has had more than his share of uphill battles.
I don't walk at all. I'm permanently using a manual wheelchair now, and that's largely because in my teens I was diagnosed with a curvature of the spine and a dislocated hip, which they did fix, but the curvature redislocated the hip. And I chose myself not to have either of those things re-looked at, so permanent wheelchair user now.
And have you had an amputation at some point?
Yeah, 5 years ago I developed septicemia and was admitted into hospital, and I spent 3 months in hospital, during which time a whole lot of things happened, including needing to have my right leg below the knee amputated, essentially to save my life.
Today I'm giving a bit of a hand, a gentle push, as John uses maximum effort to grind the wheels of his chair up a pretty steep stretch of path in the park. Over his lifetime, John, like thousands of others, has had a very significant helper in the background. Laura Fergusson Rehab.
It's a very special place. I go there often, and I've got a lot of time for the people there, the staff, the management, and the clients are wonderful people. Yeah, it's very, very special.
So how important is it then?
Oh, vital. I think it's one of the vital health and disability services that Auckland has.
Laura Fergusson Rehabilitation's been around for decades and was set up to stop people with disabilities being fobbed off to rest homes because there was nowhere better. Right now, it offers residential care independence for people living with disabilities, along with extensive rehab services for the likes of stroke, brain and spinal injuries. And not just in Auckland, Waikato and Whanganui too. But that is all about to change. Heather McLeish is the boss of Laura Fergusson Rehabilitation.
We're transitioning all services.
What does that mean, transitioning?
It means either finding other places for people to reside or to have their service provided, and or some of the services will be, the contracts are being novated in total to other providers.
What does that mean, novated?
Well, it means sold, given over. So we are out of services.
In what areas?
All of them.
Auckland, Waikato
and Whanganui.
And Whanganui. So what have you told your clients?
We have said we're transitioning, and for many of the clients who have lived on site.
So you're closing, you keep using that word transitioning, but you're no longer going to be offering services to these people. That's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how have your clients reacted to that?
It's very mixed. Some of them have been quite outstanding with their reaction. Some are very sad, and that was expected. So we planned for a lot of support on site and with people. We've gone out of our way to have weekend meetings and whatever meetings suit families as well.
By August, Laura Fergusson Rehabilitation will be no more, gone. 69 people need to find new homes, and then there's potentially hundreds of rehab clients. More on them soon. But first, here's John Volk again.
This has come as a complete shock to everybody that's involved. There was no way that I knew, not even a hint, that things were so bad that they would be closing down.
To appreciate how John feels, you need to understand the depth of his relationship with Laura Fergusson. He uses their wheelchair-accessible gym in Auckland most weekdays. He's also a past board member. As a teenager, he spent 2 years living on site, learning, he says, the skills that have allowed him to live independently for more than 40 years. And about 5 years ago, when his leg was cut off to save his life, it was Laura Fergusson who got him back in balance, literally.
So when I went to Laura Fergusson after being 3 months in hospital, I'd been on my back and semi-conscious for most of that 3 months in hospital. So I was having to start again. I was like a baby almost, and needing almost 24/7 care with personal cares, bathing and toileting and stuff like that. And the staff there were doing all of that for me. And because it was rehabilitation, you set some goals for yourself. And my one goal was that I wanted to be able to get back into my car and be able to drive again, because my car is my legs, if you like. and I get out in that, and the world is my oyster. I was admitted into Laura Fergusson in the August of 2015, and by December I was back in my car and driving, and that was really important and massive for me.
His love for both his wheels and Laura Fergusson is obvious.
Well, there's already been a lot of tears and a lot of sadness expressed, shock. People have got to know, if there is no Laura Fergusson to go to, where can they go? Where will they go?
So how has it come to this, an unceremonious end, a quiet shutting of the doors for an organisation that's helped so many?
Literally thousands of New Zealanders, literally.
Yeah, it's been a very proud history of servicing Auckland for Laura Fergusson Trust.
Laura Fergusson Rehabilitation gets funding through the Ministry of Health and ACC, along with donations and a nest egg from its original benefactors. Rob Small is on the board of Laura Fergusson Trust Incorporated. How much of this is financial?
I think it's entirely financial, and the issue that we face is that we're running those services at a loss, and that's not sustainable in the long term.
How long have you been running those services at a loss?
Probably 5 years.
And why are you running those services at a loss? What is the core problem here?
Well, the core problem is the current funding model is not adequate to meet our needs.
So in plain English, what, government contracts are not sufficient for you to cover the cost of the services you're offering?
For our business, yes. But we went to the extent of having a very forensic analysis of every one of the services we provide to see, in fact, if there was one of those that could, in fact, survive on its own. And none of them passed that kind of test. Now,
Did you ask the government to give you more funding?
We've consistently asked the government to provide more funds for some of these services, and in some cases we haven't taken clients because we knew it would be unprofitable. But
and what was their reaction? Did they give you any more money?
No. No, and then we simply turned down when we were offered contracts, we turned them down.
The board voted unanimously to shut down the services, but it's complicated. Even the CEO has a slightly different take on what's landed them here. The upkeep of rundown assets has been a strain. And then there's the chunky issue of pay equity. A settlement in 2017 that saw care and support workers' wages increase significantly after it was argued the mainly female caregivers were being paid less than males with the same skills in other industries.
When that came in, most of that is reimbursed, but not all of it. So every provider's had to find some of that money to pay staff. We are having to pay staff at the levels of DHB's pay, or we don't get them. And so that is not factored in. I mean, it's a much harder world to get the staff that everybody else is after.
So Heather, are you telling me that the much lauded pay equity has been a nail in your coffin?
Not a nail, but it's a contributor. It's not a nail as such, because I personally think that it was marvellous that people who were very underpaid, doing a tremendous and valuable job caring for people, it is great they're getting a living wage. So I don't have a problem with that. What it hasn't done is give us any difference for recruitment. It's still not a field for support workers that a lot of people will come into. We certainly don't get school leavers, no matter how hard you try. So you've got more a middle-aged workforce, and there's not a lot of opportunity to go on to a career.
Has the government funding adjusted sufficiently to cover the cost of pay equity?
For the most part, yes.
Is there a shortfall from that?
No, the shortfall is we've had to adjust our other staff salaries to get the relativity. So where I might have had a support worker paid at, let's say $18 an hour, I had people that were at $20 an hour but were qualified. So we needed to move them up, or we lose them to somebody else who pays more.
So it's the knock-on effect of pay equity.
It's a knock-on, that's a better word, it's a knock-on.
So Has the government contracts taken into account that knock-on effect?
No, but they take into account the pay equity costs.
Laura Fergusson told its residential clients in Auckland, Waikato and Whanganui it was closing in November last year. So there'd be a long lead-in time before they needed to move. Heather, where are your clients going?
So there's other, I've been working with 4 key providers in Auckland, and we're giving all clients the choice of at least 2 other providers. So there's a lot of going and looking and seeing what suits them. A lot of the other providers have houses in the community where we are on one site, so a lot of them are having options to which suburb they might go to. Some of them are looking at new suburbs, never been out that way before. So some of them are East Auckland, and some people have only lived in Central Auckland for a number of years.
That must be pretty challenging for them, also at a time when they're facing other challenges.
It is, but so first of all, no one's being pushed out. So we're doing, everybody's being reassessed. Everybody is supported.
But they are being forced to change where they might have been happy with what they were getting.
And that's fine, but you cannot continue with an outdated model. At some stage, there has to be change. How do I feel about it? I think that there is an inevitability. I've been utterly optimistic for years that we could pull some services together. The reality is we can't. And the reality is we need to stop and go on with something that's sustainable.
But they have no idea what that is or what will happen with their significant property assets. And John Volk is worried the end of Laura Fergusson Rehabilitation could throw disability services into reverse.
I don't want to see the disabled community go backwards. And what I mean by that is that we go back to the days where people are put in age inappropriate places and places that cannot and do not cater for the specific and special needs of people with disabilities, especially those with higher needs.
So what do you mean by that, John? Spell it out. Are you talking about sending young people to rest homes again?
Yep. Rest homes, private hospitals, and other facilities where they might have a bed, but what care and attention they get isn't up to the same level that they would have been getting at Laura Fergusson. The disabled community has always been the poor cousin, in my view, and it would be nice to think that in the budget this year we get a lot more funding that will be aimed specifically at the disabled community and to meet our individual and collective needs.
But for Laura Fergusson Rehabilitation, the numbers just don't add up. And after more than 5 decades, it's over.
I've had tears in my office, I've had families, I've been up and down from Whanganui to Waikato, we've had weekend meetings with families. We are getting people across the line to understand that there's another option for them. But there are some people who've lived there a long time, and it is sad. But we can't keep a service going for a handful.